Good morning, and welcome to the International Mastermind Association Grow Rich live show. My name is Galen Bingham. I'm the leadership strategist, and I am just so excited to be one of the co-hosts for today. We've got an amazing conversation for you, I just really want you to think about when is the start. When do ideas actually begin? When does every business begin? Because one of the things that the author talks about is that everything that's ever been created has been created twice. The first time it's been created in someone's mind. So that's the beginning point of everything that you've ever experienced, everything that you've ever seen. Every business had its origin, had its creation in someone else's mind first, and then they went through the steps to create the physical expression that we all get to experience. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about imagination. And I love the way Napoleon Hill breaks it down in that he says we all have two types of imagination. There is general synthetic imagination, and that's where you take things that already exist and you give it either a new function or a new image, or you blend things that already exist. And then there is creative imagination. That's where you get a download, you get this insight, this hunch from seemingly out of the blue, and that's something that we've got to act on as well. But I am not alone. I don't get to have this conversation by myself. I'm so excited to be hanging out with Dr. Peter again. Dr. Peter, man, come on in. You've got so many businesses. You've done so many things. Talk a little bit about this origin of everything that we've ever done starts as a seed of imagination, and how that is really kind of how everything gets created.
It's such an interesting topic there, Galen. I often say to clients, if you can dream it, it can come to fruition. But, here's the interesting part. I've been talking with a couple of clients lately, and there's some people who don't dream. There's some people
Mm,
who kind of shut down that imagination aspect of their lives, only dealing with reality, and I think as human beings, it's important that we imagine. It's important that we dream about what if, what could I do? You know, even if it's like those lofty dreams, even if it's those somewhat, crazy imaginations, it can come to fruition because where did that come from? How was that able to be manifest? Someone dreamed about going to the moon. It
mm.
happened. You know, someone's currently dreaming about going to Mars, right? So I say all that to say, I wonder if sometimes we as human beings, okay, here, actually, and let me say this really quick. When we're kids there, Galen, we dream a lot. We imagine a lot. What happens as we get older?
Mm.
We got bills to pay. Is that what it is? And something gets in the way. And I wonder if we can take this chapter 5 of Napoleon Hill's phenomenal book, Think and Grow Rich, and apply it more to our day in and day out. Apply it more to what if and how to get there. Of course, he gives more of the recipe throughout the book, but the imagination is a big part of it as well.
Big part of it, big part of it. And we've got someone that's going to be joining us here very shortly who knows a lot about imagination. And I'm just going to tell you just a little bit about our guest before we bring him in. Tim Burgess is, he's taking kind of an unconventional path to growth. Everyone talks about, hey, look, I attended these great schools. I had great parents, had this incredible upbringing, attended this great school, got this amazing job, and became senior vice president of something, something, something. And that's why I'm here with you today. Well, that's not going to be the story that we're going to hear today. Tim was he's been he was a troubled youth. He was raised in a single parent home. He had a series of dead end jobs, and one of his mentors said, "Hey, look, dude, you really need to read this book." I handed him a book of Think and Grow Rich. Somehow he found his way to read it, and that changed everything. So we're going to hear that story. I want everyone, before we bring him in, I want everyone to think of your biggest life excuse as to why you haven't been able to accomplish this thing that you've been dreaming about. And I want you to pull that excuse out. I want you to put it right there in the front of your screen, because I got a feeling we're gonna handle and we're gonna deal with all those excuses once we meet our guests. So with that, Tim, come on in, man. Would love to kick off this conversation with you.
Well, thanks for having me, my friend.
Well, man, I tell you, your story is intriguing because, like I said, it's not the conventional storybook fable that we usually craft. Talk a little bit about your background so that we can get into this conversation.
Yeah, sure. Or the short version, man. Dad left when I was 9, quit school in the eighth grade, wandered around for 16 years, absolutely lost. 31 years old, excuse me, baby on the way. And I answered an ad in a newspaper looking for a job, ran into the founder of the fastest growing privately held company in the United States. According to Inc. magazine, this guy went from zero to $194 million in 4 years. And he told me to get a copy of Think and Grow Rich and study a little bit every day for the rest of my life. I just quit. I quit school in the eighth grade, man. What do you mean study one book every day the rest of my life? Are you nuts? But then I realized something. He had millions and I didn't. So maybe I should shut up and listen and maybe I could get a little bit of what he had. And I picked the book up, and I still have it to this day. There's several copies of it over here, as I was showing you. There's the Laws of Success from 1946. There's a printed copy of those, and I love this material. But more than just loving it for myself, Galen, it's about helping other people with it and helping them understand how to implement it in their lives so they can produce better results in less time and truly live fulfilled, man, in 6 areas of life. I call it 6 areas of harmony.
Man, I'll tell you, I can't, I'm always intrigued and fascinated by people who have lived the principles of this book. Many of us have read the principles, many of us have committed ourselves to learning and studying the principles, but it's always great when we can talk with someone who's lived it. And I can't wait to get into your story deeper because I know we can pull out a lot of gems that can help a lot of people. Before we do that, Dr. Peter, I'd love for you to kick off this video that talks about all the principles and kind of brings them together. I think that's going to be a great backdrop for the rest of this conversation.
Absolutely. And I'm excited to dive on in this conversation with Tim. I know he's got a lot of stories, a lot of things he wants to unpack, especially around imagination, but the book in general. But those of you who have never perused through this book, who have never picked up Think and Grow Rich, today is your day. But before you pick it up, take a listen to this video that gives an overview of these 13 principles, that gives you a little bit more insight and allow it to pique your interest a little bit more if possible, so that when you pick up the book, it really fulfills everything that this video provides. So give it a listen.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right. I never grow tired, Dr. Peter, of hearing all the principles together because it's that connective tissue, I believe, that creates the magic. We talk about individual principles, but boy, when they all work together, that's when things start to happen.
Indeed, indeed. And I love it. I want to jump back in the conversation with Tim, though. Very excited. Tim, I got to start out. You got some unique words on your behind you on your wall, if you don't mind me focusing on that a little bit. I would love to hear about that, how those landed on your wall, number
Yeah.
one, but then maybe there may have been some imagination behind that as well.
Oh, absolutely. And there's no question. I had been reading Think and Grow Rich. My first mentor said, get a copy of this book, study it every day for the rest of your life. I didn't really think I should, but once again, then I met him and he had an $84,000 Rolex hanging on his wrist. And he's just as humble as you guys are. He's just humble pie, man. And he started with nothing. He came from absolutely nothing. And so I thought, maybe I should follow it. So I started reading the book. 3.5 years later, that opportunity went away. I jumped into real estate. And in real estate, I listed 17 houses my first month. I sold 92 houses my first year. I finally started implementing the book. Fast forward a few more years, and you get to 2006. And I met this guy named Bob Proctor. And Bob says, what do you really want? And I never, Napoleon Hill's asking me that every daggone day that I'm reading the book, but it never really clicked that way. And then Bob introduced me to this thing called the Stick Man. And it's actually an image that was created by a guy named Dr. Thurman Fleet in the 1930s. And he said, mind is an activity, not a thing. And since no one had ever seen the mind, he would create an image that we could work with to eliminate the confusion and bring clarity. And Bob introduced me to this Stickman character, which I used to draw all the time as I was bored in school. And before I quit, I'm drawing Stickman, but I never drew one with a head that big and a body that small. And then it clicked where Bob was teaching the same principle. Somebody told him to get a copy of this in 1961 and study a little bit every day. Excuse me. So Bob had done that. And when I started studying the stick man, and that's what I use in all of our trainings, the stick man philosophy, to our conscious mind can think, but our subconscious mind is where we feel. And people try to take an action based on how they think, and they only take that action once or twice because they don't feel it. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to put that stick man on my wall to remind me to think. Instead of just acting and doing based on habit or conditioning of the past, think about what I'm doing. Use the reasoning faculty of the mind. In another chapter, Napoleon says we could literally create or attract whatever we want or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. However, to do that, we have to develop the intellectual faculties of the mind. What the heck are the intellectual faculties of the mind? I never heard that in school. Oh, the mental muscles. I like to simplify everything. So what are the mental muscles? Perception, will, imagination, memory, intuition, and reason. Now, why don't they teach us that in third grade and fourth grade? Help us really, really develop from within instead of, just cramming us with knowledge. How about we develop from within? So that's where the stick man came from. And I use this thing everywhere in all of our teachings related to this book and how that can give us a visual because when we have a clarity on the screen of the mind, we eliminate confusion. For example, think of your kitchen. Image on the screen of your mind, no problem, right? Think of my kitchen. No image to work with. So there could only be confusion if you were asked a lot of questions about my kitchen, and confusion leads to worry, doubt, fear, and anxiety. So if we don't have clarity, use the imagination to create the image of what our life is going to look like going into the future. All we're doing is dragging the past into the future with us, which is worry, doubt, fear, and anxiety because we have no clarity. We haven't created an image. So this thing is incredibly important to me, and that's why it's on my wall.
What's interesting about that there, Tim, thank you so much for sharing that story with us for sure. I often tell people or even tell clients, and we've even said this phrase, work smarter and not harder.
Yeah.
I think even as I look at that stick man, is that's the crux of it right there.
Absolutely.
How are we using our minds better to accomplish our objectives as opposed to just getting out there and grinding, which is easier for us?
Yeah, and most people they want the grind. They're almost addicted to the grind. Well, if you get into Napoleon Hill's work, and I know you guys have, he says, success is not the result of hard work. He said, word for word, success is not the result of hard work. Well, that goes directly opposite of everything that I was taught. Now, that doesn't mean that the three of us don't work hard, but we're doing what we love to do with the feeling of loving to do it. So it's not a mental grind for us to do it. So we're not working hard.
It's
Oh
tough.
my. I can tell, but we're only a few minutes in. We're only a few minutes in. But I gotta acknowledge the folks that have joined us on YouTube. Velan Whitfield, always here. Doretha Dennis is here, of course. Carla Hill, Jason Murray is here. Shannon Charlton, Imelda Wallace, Meta Wilson is here. Laura Jackson, great morning to you. Diane King Flowers, I'm glad you guys are joining us. Get your questions ready because this is going to be an amazing conversation. But before we get back into this conversation, do me a favor. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up icon underneath the video so that we can tell the algorithm that there's a lot more going on than what might be happening in the president's office. So hit that thumbs up icon, share this with anyone that you believe needs to hear this message. All right, so Tim, I got it. I got to step in for our fearless leader, Miss Ann McNeil. She loves to ask the question, how were you first exposed to this book, which you've kind of talked us through that story. I like to ask, when did this book become more than just a book? Because I've got dozens of books on my desk and on my bookshelf, and they look as pristine as the day that I picked it up. But this bad boy, I'm really holding on. It's like the pages, the corners are kind of twisted up, and the plastic's coming off, and I got some pages that are just stuck in there. I've seen your book, and it's in worse shape than mine, dude. Really, your book is just in terrible shape. So when did this become more than just a book to you? And when did it become something that, to your point, that you study every day?
Well, I studied it every day as my first mentor instructed me to do so. But that was in the network marketing industry, the fastest growing privately held company in the United States in network marketing of all things. That was on Inc. magazine, the front cover of Inc. magazine, so very prestigious magazine. And but I went through that company with him for 3.5 years, and I didn't go. They were earning millions a month, and I'm going the wrong way. So I don't even know why it was still hanging out, but there was something about it. So I just kept reading, just kept reading. Well, that opportunity ultimately went away. And when I jumped into real estate, I was part-time in real estate for about 5 months, miserable, absolutely miserable. And a very experienced guy told me I should quit. I think that's when the book slapped me in the head right there, because I vividly remember it to this day. Quit. Nothing in that book says quit. Nothing in that book tells me that, when it gets a little tough and it doesn't look like you should just quit. Matter of fact, I think it says somewhere that quitters never win and winners never quit. I think that's the statement that is in the book. So I did quit that day. I quit my job that I had, jumped into real estate full time. I didn't realize what I had done, but that's when I listed 17 houses over the next 30 days and sold 92 houses that first month, increased my income 604% in 1 year. It's crazy. I believe it was Steve Jobs that said, you can never connect the dots looking forward, but you can always connect the dots looking backwards. And I think that's the first time that I really started to implement and use these principles subconsciously, not consciously, not even thinking that I was, hey, you know what, all at once I'm going to use these principles. No, that's not how it worked. So I jump into real estate, and first year was miserable, and then it was like Napoleon hit me in the head with a 2x4 because I was ready to quit real estate. And he said, dude, you have no system. I'm flying by the seat of my pants doing millions of dollars in volume. And you can't run a business flying by the seat of your pants, man. So then we created a system. I think that's when I really started to implement the material instead of just study the material and gain the knowledge from it, to really start implementing it and using it.
Fantastic. You really do highlight for me how the first time, maybe the second time you read this book, for me, it was kind of an intellectual experience. Does this make sense compared to other things I've experienced. How
Mhm.
does this fit? But it
Mhm.
wasn't until I actually started leveraging the principles, actually using the principles, following the 6 steps, actually crafting a goal. How much money do I want? By when? What am I willing to do in exchange for it? Reciting and rewriting the self-confidence formula, actually doing the things that it told me to do, that I started seeing, quite honestly, some pretty spooky things starting to happen in alignment with what I was doing. And then again, just your stick figure behind you. How was that transition for you, where you transition from intellectualizing the things that you were reading to, I don't even know that I understand it, I'm just gonna do what it says.
It, it, we got to go back a few chapters now to faith. And how do we develop faith where faith does not already exist? And that's through repetition of study. So we repetitively study something so much that we gain the faith in our own abilities to
Mm,
actually do it. Now, the faith he's talking about is not religious faith. It's okay if you have that. I'm not saying anything wrong, but that's just not what he's talking about in the book. He's talking about how to develop faith in our own ability. So we have to go back to that and in that chapter, and then pull forward and once again create the image. I mean, we're in imagination. Most people are using that thing backwards, man.
mm.
How many people do you hear say, "Oh my God, I can't imagine that"? Why do we always go what if to the negative? Why do we go what if? Oh, what if it doesn't work? What if? Oh, what if? What if? That's creating an image because every thought has an image. We're just not fully aware of the image. For example, think of an airplane. Can't think of an airplane without an image on the screen of the mind, right? So every thought, as fast as they're firing into our mind, has an image that goes with it. And most people are holding on to the negative side of the image instead of the positive side on what if it does work? Instead of what if it, oh my gosh, what if it doesn't work?
Well, I'm gonna throw this back to Dr. Peter, because this is sounding a lot of like a lot of the coaching conversations we've had. One of my clients would famously say, "Well, I'll do it. What's the worst that could happen?" And my question was, "Okay, but what's the best that could happen? What's the best that could happen?" Dr. Peter, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I even heard you say before there, Galen, maybe even to me is, what if that were not true? What I was the sometimes the lies that we tell ourselves, how we get in our own way. What if that were not true? What if the future is that much brighter as we move forward, as you're thinking? Tim, this is phenomenal. It's allowing me to even take a look back into my own mind and how I am seeing the world, how I'm seeing the future, how I am dreaming and imagining. You kind of gave us a sneak peek into this a little bit, but Ann McNeil asked a question in the chat. How have you used your imagination to be successful in your career or make money?
By creating the image on the screen of the mind of what I'm building and where I'm going. But
Hmm.
once again, we talked about it earlier. There's two types of imagination, synthetic and creative. I might go off on a tangent if I go too long. Guys, stop me,
Okay.
man. Synthetic imagination, everybody uses every day. Any singer-songwriter, all the words have been used at one time or another. All the notes have been played at one time or another. They use synthetic imagination to rearrange and interlock the pieces into a new puzzle. However, what if one of the puzzle pieces doesn't fit?
Hmm.
I need the answer. Where does the answer come from? That comes through the creative imagination. What do you mean through the creative imagination? Okay, so let's go back to this thing called infinite intelligence, which Napoleon talks about all the time, right? And he talks about creative imagination, and he talks about intuition, which is one of the intellectual faculties of the mind, one of the mental muscles, right? So we have to create an image on the screen of our mind or we have confusion, right? Think of my kitchen, guys. Can't think of my kitchen. There's confusion there. So if
Hmm.
we don't have an image to bring clarity, we have confusion. So a lot of people read this book and they want to study this book. I did for years, but I still didn't have an image to work with, so I had confusion. So I just, from the years of reading this book, Infinite Intelligence, picture a big orange bucket up here. It's full of infinite intelligence.
Hmm.
It'll never run out of infinite intelligence. Never. It's infinite, right? Never ending, never, no beginning, no end, right? Infinite intelligence. That intelligence just flows. And then there's this big hose coming off the end of that bucket. And that big hose attaches right there That's called your intuition. You ever get a gut feeling? Yeah. So what happens is as they need the piece of that puzzle to fit into that song and it's not fitting, they have to go to infinite intelligence through the creative imagination to receive the answer. Here's the issue of why people don't receive the answer. Through worry, doubt, fear, and anxiety, they take this hose that's connected, and they put a bunch of knots in it and tie it up with worry, doubt, fear, and anxiety so the answer can't get to them because they're full of doubt instead of full of faith. That took 19 years of study in this book, 19 years, no exaggeration. There's one sentence in the fourth principle that changed everything about this book for me. Everything. It just changed it all. But we got to go back to the auto-suggestion is the chapter. But it took 19 years before I saw that. Now, I'd read the book every day. I do weekly webinar series on the book. So I'm in that chapter every 15 weeks, 4 times a year, go dissecting that chapter, just dissecting it, but it still took 19 years. Why does that happen that way? Why does that happen? Why in the world didn't... Have you ever read a page and get to the bottom of the page and wonder, what the heck did I just read? Okay, it's not me. It's not just me then. That's where repetition of study comes into play. But most people won't use the repetition of study. Repetition. Napoleon Hill says, how often should we read our story? In chapter 2, every night before we go to bed, every morning as soon as we wake up, what are we doing? We're putting the image on the screen of our mind over and over and over again about what we're building. It's not just a bunch of words. It's to put the image on there and to install that image over and over and over and over and over again so we develop faith in our ability to do it. For example, what's 5 times 5?
25.
How'd you develop that answer so fast?
Repetition.
Repetition. And how much faith do you have in your ability to answer that question correctly?
A lot.
A
A
million
lot.
percent faith, man. You have zero doubt, right?
None.
What if we studied this book the way we studied math? How much faith would we develop in ourselves to build whatever it is we want to build? Whether it's an empire of millions and millions of dollars, or whether it's an organization that's helping people and we get people to give us the millions of dollars so we can give it to them. It doesn't
I
matter.
love it. I love it. I love it. And obviously, I love the connection to music.
Okay.
One of my favorite musicians that we just lost a couple of years back is Quincy Jones. Just all genres. I mean, he's at the cornerstone of Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, you name it. And his memoir is called 12 Notes
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, all of music is just 12 notes. It's the same 12 notes. They haven't created new notes, 12 notes. And he said in an interview, he said that when he writes music, he only writes 80% because he wants to leave the other 20% for God to come into the room. Because that's what they're paying him for. They're paying him for those windows to allow God to come into the room for what he's done with those other 12 notes. So I just love the way that your message is connecting with tangible things that we've seen other people be successful with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, another thing too that I'm drawn to is if for those who are watching this conversation, there is a shine on your face. There's a look on your face. I mean, you're still curious, but you're convinced.
Oh
It's
yeah,
it's
man.
it's like you're curious about the best way to share, the best way to articulate, but you're not curious about whether or not this works.
Oh
Tell me about where that confidence has come from.
That confidence comes from seeing other people implement what we've taught them. Going to it just what we teach people. I'm going to go back to when I first started teaching this stuff. I took a kid out of real estate who was earning 19 grand a year, miserable, broke, living in a little apartment, man. And a year later, he's earning 90 grand a year.
Mm.
That's whoa, wait a minute. It's not just me. It's not a fluke because I was hanging out with Bill over here for all these years and mega millionaire. It's not just me. No, this stuff works. And then Gary Rosignol, 27-year veteran of real estate. He doubled his income working less hours. Where's the logic behind that one? There's no logic there. And then recently, Brian Dempsey, and Brian's still a part of our mentoring series in our system. And he's making real estate work, and it's working well for him, but that's not nearly as important as the fact that this guy is no longer on any PTSD medications. Got rid of all of them. I might tear up on that one, because that's what this is all about. See, it's not just about helping somebody. We want to be wealthy, but not just rich in money. See, wealth is 6 areas: spiritual, social, mental, physical, family, and financial. It's not just one, it's 6. You want true wealth. Well, Brian could go out and earn all the money in the world, but what if he's still taking all these medication for PTSD? Is he really fulfilled? Is he really happy? Is he really living at peace, calmness within the being? Not a chance. But now we work on the mind, get the mindset right. He's created an image using his imagination to the proper way to create an image of what he's building instead of where he's been. And now Brian visualizes and holds the screen of his mind, the image of where he's going, and he no longer needs that medication, man.
Wow.
That's what this is all about. There's no question on this planet whether or not this stuff works. The only question is whether or not somebody will implement it or study it long enough to implement it.
Right,
Because we're
right.
going
Love
against
it.
that conditioning thing, man. We're going against how we've been conditioned in the past to, what is education? Well, it comes from a book and a building. No, that's called knowledge. Education comes from within, as
Mm,
Napoleon says in this book, the Latin word, what I believe, educo, to draw from within.
fantastic. Hey,
That's what
I want to ask one more question. I'm going to turn this back over to Dr. Peter. We were talking earlier because you just brought up conditioning, and we were talking earlier about one of my favorite authors who shares the same last name as you, Luke Burgess, wrote the book Wanting, and he talks about how humans are the most mimic animals on the planet. We mimic what we see other people do. We also mimic what we see other people want. So at the end of the day, most of our wanting is what our parents said that we should want, or what, I want what I see Dr. Peter has. He's got this thing, and I might want a different color, but that's kind of cool, right? So I want that too. How do you fight against the conditioning to find out what you actually want, not what other people and other systems tell you that you should want?
That's a process, my friend. That's certainly not an event. It's not like going to Walmart and getting something, man. This is a process. And we remember for myself, I can only speak for 31 years, I was conditioned to think a certain way and believe a certain thing. And then I met a person that says, no, Tim, money is very easy to come by. Huh? I was conditioned just the opposite of that. He said, dude, I make over $1 million a month. And then look at me, I ain't struggling. Whoa, wait a minute. That was so far outside of my comfort zone, out of my conditioning, it was hard to even comprehend. And so people get so locked in this prison. It's a self-imposed prison, and it's based on one of the intellectual factors, one of the mental muscles. It's called perception. We perceive a world. Well, our perception is our own self-imposed prison.
Hmm.
So one of the things we want to always learn to do on purpose, by design, conscious thought, journey beyond our perception, go beyond it. Now, how do we do that? This is the way I was taught to think, how do I go beyond my perception? That's the key right there. Learn to think. Wallace Wattles, I'm going to another book. I apologize. Science of Getting Rich says thinking is the hardest and most laborious thing we ever learn to do. And then we get a book called Think and Grow Rich. And some people go to implement it and they read it and they go to, I read that once. You read this book once and set it down, it's probably not going to do much to change your life. You study this book a little bit every day, just like you did math, a little bit what's 5 times 5 again? Uh-huh. See, why is that confidence there? Because it's in the cells of our being. It's not in a conscious mind anymore. The answer's in the cells of our being. We study this material like that, and we get to implement it just like we implement 5 times 5 is, boom. And if I said 5 plus 5, you know the answer to that one too immediately, right? So you know the difference between the two, and it's only through the repetition of study. Unfortunately, most people don't want to repetitively study anything.
Well, I think you said, Peter, I swear, this is the last thing I'm going to say, I swear. But you said something that has really taken up space in my mind, and that is thinking is hard. Real thinking is hard work.
It is.
And because it's hard work, people tend to not want to do it. We tend to want to let the pundits on television tell us what we think or what we should think, or we tend to let our parents and their dreams for us tell
Yeah,
us what we should want,
that's right.
right? And we don't really want to put the work into thinking because thinking is hard. And then the author says thinking is the cornerstone to enjoying any kind of riches, however you want to define riches.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Peter, am I on track, off
Yeah,
track?
so much stuff here. I'm in 100 miles a minute going in 100 different directions. I want to come back something you said earlier, Timmy. It made me think of another book. And the book is Nothing is Original. I say actually it may even be a TED Talk. Um, and meaning that everything that we do is taking from something else that we do.
Absolutely.
Galen kind of alluded to that with the Quincy Jones analogy there for sure. Talk to us about that there, Tim. Especially as we're thinking about it from an imagination perspective, we're imagining based on that kitchen,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, what we want to do is create the image on the screen of the mind of what we want to build.
Mm-mm.
You love to use the builder analogy. Nobody would go to a builder and say, "Build me a house." Builder looks at you and say, "Oh, I'd love to. What kind of house you want me to build?" No, 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 just build me a
Mm.
house. Dude, if you don't give me a set of plans, blueprints, a clear image on the screen of my mind of what you want me to build, I can't build. People just haphazardly going into the future without an image on the screen of the mind of what they want to build. So the only images they're holding on the screen of the mind are the images of the past, which then the past becomes what? The future. And then we run into the rut called same old, same old. Same stuff, different day. We've all heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then that original that template, we can apply it, but then expand on it with the infinite intelligence.
Yeah. See, and that's where the concept comes in. It says, let go and let God.
Mm.
Hand it over to infinite intelligence, man. Let go. Create the image of what you want. Get a very clear image. You talk about that story in chapter 2. I have 3 of them right next to me. There's 3 sheets of paper. They're the same story sitting right next to me. Why? Because this is why it creates an image immediately. And that's what we want to do. Again, then we get all worked up and all worked up. Why? He says apply emotion to it. You ever notice anything that you were emotional about, high emotional impact, you still remember it from when it happened 20 years ago?
Mm.
But then again, if I ask you how many soldiers were in the Revolutionary War, studied at one time, you don't know the answer to that. No emotional impact, right? So
Wow.
what we're going to do is use our imagination to create an image on the screen of our mind of what we're building, Dr. Peter, because if we don't do that, all we're doing is dragging the past into the future with us. And we're not thinking. Studies overwhelmingly, brainwave technology overwhelmingly shows the majority of the time people do not think. They simply act based on habit of the past,
Because it's in our nature just to do.
just to do. And why do we do when we don't really want it? That's called conformity.
Mm.
That's called conformity, man. The peer pressures in schools on conformity are amazing. And I only know that because I have a 9-year-old grandson and I'm extremely involved in his school and the stuff that I just, guys, let me just come in and I give all of you a copy of this. But you actually have to read it and then teach from it.
Yeah.
Ah. But
Yeah,
anyway, they're teaching a conformity. Now, I'm not saying everything they're doing is wrong or bad. I'm not here to beat up the schools, not in any way, shape, or form, man.
We get it.
God, I have to step in and make sure that we're allowing Dylan to draw from within, to get real education, and to truly grow, and not just be a conformist. Excuse me, the expression, just regurgitating facts.
yeah. We're
I'm
we're,
saying
we're
it's
actually we're actually seeing that on main stage right now. In that the reason, to your point, the school systems have taught conformity. The author actually talks about this. He says because it was built around the Industrial Revolution. We were trying to get people who will execute. We were trying to get people, we just created this assembly line. We're trying to get people to put this widget in that round hole, and that's what we need you to do. And the author even says, wow, if I were starting a school, I'd start with these principles because this is creating independence of thought. And that's the very thing that they're talking about right now, that they're trying to do away with independence of thought because they want to create more people who can put that widget in the round hole just the way that they want you to do. And so this becomes even more important, but it becomes with, can you imagine something different for your life than what you're currently enjoying?
Absolutely. You know, and think about just the three of us. No conformists are sitting here. No.
Hey, Galen, Victoria in the chat says, Tim, your stick figure is an authentic developmental milestone in young children's drawing stages, where large heads and minimal bodies are typical. This is how young children often see themselves. Is there some truth to why it looks like that on your wall
I
as
have
well?
that I can't answer with any type of validity. It's I have to give credit where credit's due. I didn't come up with that. It was once again it was created by a guy named Dr. Thurman Fleet. He was a holistic chiropractor in San Antonio, Texas in the 1930s.
Mm.
If you do any study at all on Dr. Thurman Fleet, that's where the stick man came from. And then Bob Proctor brought it to my attention. And the first time I saw the Stickman, and now I've got this thing in all sorts of configurations. To why? Because when we have a visual, we develop clarity. When we develop clarity, we open up the conscious to the subconscious pathway. And then we put the analytic mind, which is right between the conscious and the subconscious, we'll put it on the back burner and we'll allow the material to go in. If we don't allow the material to go to the subconscious, if we reject the material right away, we'll never feel it. You ever notice people jump all over New Year's resolution to go to the gym? What happens by February at the gym?
Not even till February.
I rest
Yeah,
my
I was
case.
just going to say.
So you with me? So why does that happen? Conscious mind only. Conscious mind only. They're thinking they want to do this. They think it. They think it. They think it, but they never feel it. So they force themselves to do it for a couple of weeks. But the imagination and the image is on the negative side of it. The pain of getting up, the pain of the muscles. There's no imagination and image of what this physical being will look like. So what do? They quit. Well, what if they just repetitively studied it over and over again to create the feeling? Because when you do that, what happens if you miss a day at the gym? I don't feel right, man. I don't feel right. I missed a day at the gym. But that's a transition period that people have to go through, and they're not willing to. So we just take this little basic stick man, and it's basic as it can get. It's just basic. It's two circles and a conscious and a subconscious. Now, here's the problem. Don't think that just about half of your head's conscious and the other half subconscious. That's not how it works. This being, this thing here, this is the subconscious. Separate the two of them. Think of an airplane. You got an image on the screen of your mind. There's your conscious mind. Think of the way you feel when you're holding a little baby, or you're holding a puppy, or you help somebody get the fulfillment that they're looking for. Think of that feeling. Get into that feeling. That feeling, that's subconscious.
Got it.
And we want to use the conscious to affect the subconscious because the subconscious is responsible for the actions that we take.
Love
Tim,
it. I
Tim,
love it.
really quick there, Galen. Tim, today in today's world, we're inundated by so much negativity. It's easy for us to digest. And to your point, worry, doubt, fear, and anxiety, it's easy for it to creep in to our goals, to even our imagination. How do you overcome that?
Go back to your story. I can complicate the heck out of this. We can keep it very, very simple. Remember, I quit school in the 8th grade. I like to simplify everything. Not oversimplification, just simplify it. Napoleon Hill wrote a prescription for success that came directly from Carnegie. Step 1, what do you want? He says, how much money do you want? But you can do it for anything. It doesn't matter. What do you want? Step 2, what are you giving in return for what you want? Step 3, what's the date? Step 4, create the plan. And begin it once, whether you're ready or not. Oh, that's what most people don't do. They'll create the plan and it ain't perfect. I can't do that. They have no image on the screen of the mind of what they're building, or they would go forward. Step 5, read that statement out loud. Out loud. Out loud. Step 6, do this what? A couple times a day. Or that's step 6. Step 5, write the statement. Step 6, read the statement. Most people get to step 5 and they stop.
Mhm.
And then they get a little discouraged and they go, how do I get out of this discouragement, Tim? How about if you read your story? How about I truly just read your story and get emotionally involved with it exactly as the man is telling us to do in chapter 4, the third principle, which is autosuggestion. Plain old unemotional words have no action influence on the subconscious mind. When we emotionalize it, guess what we're doing? We're giving it a clear image. When we give it a clear image, we create the feeling. We create certainty instead of uncertainty. We move forward with faith instead of fear.
Mhm.
It's all because of a clear image. It's really not difficult. This is how all the discouragement sets in, and it sets in for everybody. I don't care how long people have been studying this material. You go to Tony Robbins, any of those big names out there you want to go to, they get discouraged too. Guess how they stay out of it? They focus on what they're building instead of the problem at hand. They have to deal with the problem at hand, but they focus and they dwell upon what they're building and where they're going. I
Mhm.
have copies of this story everywhere. I got copies of this book on my Sea-Doo.
Dr. Peter, this is reminding me of that annual meeting that we go to, just to get the reinforcement to stay focused on what are you trying to accomplish. Talk a little bit about the annual meeting.
Yeah, hey there, folks. We definitely do here at Think and Grow Rich Live. We do an annual meeting, and it is held every January. And Napoleon Hill talks a lot about masterminds, right?
Mhm.
And the big thing is, who are you surrounding yourself with that needs to challenge you, hold you accountable? And Tim, we would love to hear that about that as we finish up. But let me remind folks, if you don't have that individual or the individuals with whom you can hold yourself accountable, perhaps it may be time to start thinking about something like an annual meeting where you can surround yourself, put your goals out there, put your feelers out there about what you want to accomplish, write them down as Tim has mentioned here, but then have someone hold you accountable to them, not just in one area of your life, but in multiple areas of your life. Not just money, but even in health and fitness and your retirement and so many other family, right? If that's not you, perhaps today you need to begin about looking at January 2nd and 3rd. And actually, I think the dates may change, but January 2nd and the 3rd. We'll put the link in the chat, but definitely check it out. Galen and I will definitely be there for sure. Tim, how are you held accountable? Who's in your circle, sir?
Whew. Napoleon Hill, Bob Proctor,
Mm,
Christ.
mm,
I can name. Yeah, I know you guys have been in the book. Go into the chapter on the sixth sense, your invisible
yep,
counsel.
yep.
Develop your invisible counsel. Not only that, I have a mastermind group of very, very high quality people in our company maximizing results. We have certain things, projects, things we're working on. And I'm not going into one of those meetings not doing what I said I was going to do.
Mm,
That's not going to happen. Not. So for me, it's not even doing it for myself. It's doing it because I told Galen I would do it.
yeah.
And
That's
so,
it.
and most people need that in their lives. This is another big thing. If you get into between the words of Think and Grow Rich, you realize we're not motivated by opportunity for gain. We're motivated by fear of loss.
Mm.
So if it's not my opportunity for gain, if I do it for somebody else, my personality traits, if you understand, that's a whole nother Galen or Dr. Peter, I'm going to do something, I'm doing it.
That's
What
it.
if you run into a roadblock, Tim? I'm going to find me a big earth mover and move it.
Love it.
And that's my first mentor. And he used to tell us, until you develop that attitude, little roadblocks will stop you.
Mm, I
But
love
it's
it.
for Galen, man. I got to get it done for Galen. I told Galen I would do it, man. But dude, there's a big road in the way. What? Find a way around it. Call a jet, call a helicopter, do something, find a way around it. We told Galen we were going to do that. We're doing it.
I
See
love
how
it.
certain that is, man. That wasn't me 29 years ago when I first got the book.
Mm,
But it's
Well,
it's a transition because of the repetition of study. It's just repetition, man. A little bit every day.
I
I live
love it.
it every day. I
I
love
love the reminders. You know, as we start to try to close this conversation, I would just love to hear from everyone. What are some of the key insights that you've gotten from this conversation? And then how can people get a hold of you? Dr. Peter, I'll start with you. What are some of your key insights from this conversation? And if, like me, they want to get some of that that mind shifting experience that you provide.
You know, I will tell you the one that's really just solidified is the 5 times 5 principle, right? The repetition that I know about, but I'm not doing like I need to do. And I need to take a step back and go back to where I started from that perspective and know what works. And how do I begin to repeat it so that I believe it? Right. And that's the huge part of a big part. Don't get me wrong, I wrote a lot of other stuff down too, but that is something I got to begin today again to get back into that repetition that we all need. Thanks so much, Tim, for that reminder as I continue to move forward. Hey, folks, my name is Dr. Peter James. I'm the high performance coach helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me at shiftyourmindset.com, or you can find me also on LinkedIn and I'm just living on LinkedIn at Peter James Chicago. So Galen, another phenomenal show. Tim, we have to have you back again, my friend.
I'd love to come back. I appreciate the opportunity to share this material and truly help people, not just with the knowledge, with the understanding, because without understanding, we don't get the implementation.
Fantastic. Well, I'll share my insights, and we'll save you for last, Tim. But this has been, as Dr. Peter said, another phenomenal show. And for me, I'm always excited when I get to interact with people who are living the principles. It's one thing to read and understand the principles intellectually, but it's another thing when you can experience someone who is so convinced, so committed because they've been living it. And that's exactly what we've been treated to today. My key aha is just how important it is to do the dadgum things that the book tells you to do. You can't do some of them and then get upset when you don't get the results. You've got to do everything. You've got to read the dadgum affirmation statement twice a day. It doesn't work if you don't do it twice a day. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work if you create your own words to your affirmation. Yeah, you'll get some benefits, but follow the dadgum template. As my brother likes to say, these are principles. This can't work for everybody but you, right? This can't work for everyone on the planet except you.
Right.
Follow the steps and you'll get the results. Those are my key ahas. I'm Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. You can find me all over social media, with the exception of Facebook. I'm out of Facebook. But the best way, the most fun way to get a hold of me is to check out my podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We talk to leaders all over the planet about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they believe it really takes to be an effective leader. Double dog dare you to try us at least once, guarantee you that you will take at least one more step closer to your goals. This has been amazing. Tim, what key insights just became more clear to you, even as you were listening to yourself through this conversation? A lot of times I learn a lot, although I'm the one doing the talking. I'm like, wow, that was pretty insightful. What key ahas did you get from this conversation? And then how can people get a hold of you if they want to take advantage of some of the courses that you teach? They just want to touch some of the passion that you have for this content.
Sure. You can find me all over. Just go look up Think and Grow Rich. You'll find me on YouTube. I don't have a big thing. There's Maximizing Results LLC.com. We exist truly to help to help you take the steps to get more in your life. And that's why we call the company Maximizing Results. And it's an honor to be here. My big aha and what I learned today, again, it's not that it's learned it for the first time, but again, is how much I enjoy sharing this material and teaching this. We have to come up with a purpose. And if you're advancing just beyond Napoleon Hill and going to Bob Proctor and some of the other teachers, Sometimes our purpose shouldn't necessarily be driven around money. Well, wait a minute, Tim. It says on the front of the book for people who resent poverty, poverty in life, not just poverty in money, right? But I learned more so than anything how I love helping people develop balance and harmony in life, spiritual, social, mental, physical, family, and financial. And I just love simplifying this book to simplify it. Now, once again, 19 years to find one line in it. It's not the easiest of reads, so I love to simplify this book. And I was talking to my business partner this morning before we jumped online, and he said, "Man, I hear a fire in your voice I haven't heard in a while." I said, "Dude, I'm going to talk about Think and Grow Rich, man. With me and Think and Grow Rich." He said, "Well, why don't we fire up that weekly webinar again? We just got really, really busy, so we put the weekly webinar on the back burner. We have people from Australia, all over the world, join us at 9 p.m. On Thursday nights, and we're gonna fire that puppy back up. We're gonna get that going again. There's no charge to join us for that, man. Anybody can join us." And we take you through. We have Joe on. Joe will talk. We didn't even talk about Joe. We're running out of time. Joe, took this material, the 6 steps, just with this, folks. Just with this and implementing those 6 steps, he put $30 million in paid off properties, paid for. And then he decided to increase another 10 million. So now he's at 40 million paid off. I was telling y'all before we got started, in this little town of 8,400 people, 900 people every month pay Joe rent, either in his rent-to-own stores or his properties or something. And everybody in that town loves this guy. Why? Because the veterans, he drives by a veteran, hands him a $20 bill. He's just such a giving guy. This book can take you anywhere you want to go. Man, I'll go for hours if you let me go.
Oh, well, that's exactly why we do this every week. So every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, please join us as we dig deeper into the concepts and the principles of Think and Grow Rich. As I said earlier, this is a system that seems to work. It seems to be built on principles, and it's not possible that it can work for everyone on the planet except you. So dig in. If you don't have a copy, get your copy, but join us every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time as we dig deeper into the principles of Think and Grow Rich. Thank you so much for joining us, Tim. And like Dr. Peter, expect to get another call, man. We need to have you back.
Thank you
Until
so
next
much.
time.
God bless.
Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.